Welcome to episode 163 of Explode Your Expert Business Show, brought to you by gtex.org.uk. I'm your host, Simone Vincenzi, the Expert Strategist, and this is the podcast for experts who want to become the ultimate authority in their niche while making an impact in the world. Today, I have a pleasure to interview the one and only Joel Erway on the highest converting webinar strategy, so make sure you stay tuned until the end. I know I've been absent for a week. That's been the longest I haven't published an episode on our show since we started. It's been a bit mental, insane. I just came back from a speaking gig in Spain called the Freedom X Festival about location independence. Amazing networking, great experience. You will hear actually some of the podcasts, the interviews that I've recorded there while we were in a hub called the Visibility Hub with all the PR journalists. And I made some great interviews for you, so stay tuned for the future. Now, before we get started and I explain also what are we going to cover on this episode, I want to share with you the tool of the day. This is something that I do on and off when I find something which is worth sharing. It can be a tool, an app, something that makes my life and business easier. And I was listening to a great podcast called the Digital Marketing Podcast from Michael Stelzner. And I found they mentioned this incredible tool, which is called Otter, O-T-T-E-R. And automatically is an app that automatically transcribes your audio files and minutes. So if you are doing a recording, you can upload the file or you can straight record into the microphone, and then immediately the artificial intelligence automatically for free is giving you the transcription of what you have created. So let's say you are doing a podcast. You want to create a blog post out of it, then you can put your podcast into the system, and then immediately will give you the transcription. Now, this is literally word by word, and some words, in particular, if you have a strong Italian accent like me, they're not going to be picked up perfectly. But I found that actually is pretty accurate, and if you have a very great British accent or American, whatever, and that will be a great tool to use. So it's called otter.ai, OTTER.ai. You can find also the link in the show notes. Going back to the interview today, as I said, we have the one and only Joel Erway. Joel has been creating and delivering effective sales presentation for more than 8 years, with sales totaling more than 10 million as a direct result. And Joel and his agency help online course creators, coaches, consultants leverage webinar to sell their products and services, book phone appointments, and generate qualified sales leads. The goal of the webinar agency is to educate its visitors, user, and customer on how to leverage webinar funnels, sales messaging, and marketing techniques in their business for growth and success. In this episode, we talked about how to create high-converting webinars, what works now in the webinar industry, also the future of webinars. Now look out for the lifting the veil part of the interview, which is the last part of the interview, where Joel reveals a tool that he's using on a daily basis. Is absolutely incredible. So check out that part as well, because for me it was mind-blowing. You can read the interview transcript and get the bonus resources at www.gtex.org.uk/163. There you can connect with all the links that we have created for Joel, because you must connect with this incredible man. Now, if you didn't download yet our Ultimate Selling from the Stage checklist, which is a checklist that I've created to help you create high converting presentations for seminars, for webinars, then get it right now. It's a very powerful tool, very powerful resource. It's been downloaded now for more than 5,000 people, and I'm receiving messages and emails every day saying how great it is. So get it right now, because it can make the difference, and it will make the difference in your next sales presentation. And if you haven't joined our Facebook group and you want to connect with like-minded experts, trainers, coaches, speakers, people that are doing great work in the world and are putting the work behind the scene, that are doers, not talkers, that are making things happen every single day, join our Facebook group, Explode Your Expert Biz. You can find the link in the show notes, or you can go online and check on Facebook and check Explode Your Expert Biz. Same title of the podcast. If you want to reach out to me and any question, you want to suggest a guest as well, or you want me to cover a specific topic, maybe for my solo episodes that I release every Friday, then email me at simone@gtex.org.uk. And it goes without saying, subscribe right now. Like, this is the first thing you gotta do. Subscribe. I know you're now thinking, okay, Simone, it's time for you to shut up. And I want to hear it from Joel. I want to hear the highest converting webinar strategy. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Joel Erway for the highest converting webinar strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Explode Your Expert Biz Show. Today I'm here with the one and only Joel Erway. How you doing, Joel?
Hey, what's up, Simone? Thanks for having me on.
It's brilliant. Now it's time to swap sides. It's time to swap sides. I've been interviewed recently on your show, which was a brilliant show. I really love that. And now it's time for me to grill you a bit. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready, man. Let's rock and roll.
That's brilliant. So I want to ask first about, we're going to talk about webinars, what's trending right now with webinars, what's working on very well. But how did you get into webinars? Where were your first steps into the webinar world?
Yeah, so I came into the webinar space kind of through, my background is in engineering. So I graduated from mechanical engineering school back in 2009. No intention of doing webinars or sales presentations. So the way that I kind of backed into all of this was I only lasted about 8 months in my engineering role as a typical design engineer. I just couldn't sit behind a desk. I couldn't operate behind a computer without any sort of engagement. And so, go to school for 5 years, only last 8 months with that degree. I quickly transitioned into I grabbed a new job as a sales engineer where I was responsible for growing a new territory from scratch. And so the primary method of drumming up business, we would have to give these sales presentations. Mm-hmm. Now, when we first started, I wasn't the one giving the sales presentations. We would bring our reps, we'd bring our manufacturers through, and they would give the presentations. After 2 or 3 years, like, our sales were pretty stagnant. I mean, like, we weren't making a whole lot of progress. Like, we were making sales, but it was really, really hard work. And I saw that there was a huge opportunity with our sales presentation. Like, that was the primary lead gen for us. And we weren't generating many leads. And nobody in my company had really looked at that. They're like, well, the manufacturer does it. Like, just let them do it. They never looked at optimizing that piece. Yeah. So I saw it, and I'm like, well, number one, I can't just wait around for these, because these manufacturers flew in from all over the country, all over the world. So, like, I was really just kind of held at their will whenever they could make it into town. And it was usually once a year, once every other year at best. So I'm like, well, if I need to generate more leads, I need to do more of these presentations. And they suck anyway, so I need to do them better. Mm-hmm. So as I was traveling around the country, visiting these manufacturers, I would, every time that I stopped in a layover in a terminal, I would grab a book on how to give an effective sales presentation. And after 2 or 3 books that I bought, I saw some very clear patterns of what you're supposed to be doing. And I redid some of the presentations, and I gave them on my behalf. I gave them on behalf of my manufacturers. So, and that's when sales started to really take off. And I understood really what they were doing wrong, and I changed the presentations, and instantly we saw a huge lift in sales and revenue just from me rewriting the presentations. So that's kind of I give that to start because like that's really where I came from, giving in-person
Yeah.
sales presentations. So after grew that territory, did very, very well. I caught the entrepreneurial itch and I transitioned into my own thing.
That's a bad itch.
I know
When
it
it's
is a bad itch.
when it gets you, like it itches like crazy. You gotta scratch it.
Yeah, it's the fire ant itch, and you can never get rid of it. So, so I decided to go off and do my own thing. I wrote a book to start. I did some coaching and tutoring to bring in some revenue. And ultimately, after a couple of failed ventures, I wouldn't call them failed, but like learning experiences, I realized I needed to learn the art of digital marketing. So I hired a coach, and he's the one who introduced me to sales webinars. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I've done them before. I'm comfortable doing them.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that I could do a webinar and sell, directly on a presentation. So I learned his style and put my own flavor to it, but just started really practicing it. And I was actually making sales. It was with my course, but there were other parts of my business model that caused me to be not profitable. And I didn't realize that at the time. Looking back, I see how close I really was to like really hitting a home run with what I was doing before. But ultimately, I ran out of ad spend money. I ran out of cash to continue that. And I reached out to my coach and I said, "Hey man, I'm out of cash. I love your coaching program though. Like, is there any way that I can work for you to generate some revenue on the side or whatever?" And I actually offered to be a phone salesperson because I knew that he was generating more leads for his coaching program.
Mm-hmm.
I was the perfect testimonial because I really did love his coaching program. I just ran out of personal funds for ads. And so he said, "Sorry, man, I don't have any openings right now, but what you should do is you should connect with this guy, Jason, and he's looking for a phone salesperson to follow up with leads on his webinar. He's doing a weekly live webinar, and he wants somebody to close those deals over the phone." So I'm like, okay, cool. Hook up with Jason. Jason's like, "Let's do it. Watch my webinar first so you know what I'm selling, and then follow up with all the people who didn't buy," which was a lot of people. I mean, he was making about one sale a week on a live webinar for his $1,000 course. So he's like, "Watch the webinar." I watched the webinar, and I'm like, "Man, this sucks." And so I approached him, and I'm like, "Hey, man, like, out of curiosity, like, to be honest, I had no experience in phone sales. I was just hustling. I was just like, I knew that
you were learning while you were doing it.
Yep, exactly. And so I'm like, "Hey, man," I said this in nicer words, but I said, "Your webinar kind of blows. And how would it, would it be okay if I took a stab at improving this for you?" And he's like, "Absolutely, dude. Like, of course. I hate doing webinars. So if you rewrite it, like, I just know that I need to do it, right? So if you take a stab at it and you present it, go for it." So he was making about one sale per week with his live webinar. 2 weeks later, I took his presentation, I delivered it on his behalf, and we did 14 sales that week of a $1,000 course. So he went from $1,000 a week to $14,000 a week.
Sweet.
Yep. So, and that is what's launched me into the webinar space because number one, it was valuable for my clients. And number two, it paid me very well. I took 10% of the sales on that when I was working with him. It was just a 10%, revenue split.
Yep.
So that made me like $1,500, which was a lot more money than I had made, and it was all profit because I wasn't running any of the ads. I'm like, this is awesome.
It's all cash, and you were delivering it, and it will.
And I didn't have
you
to do
didn't
phone
put a lot
sales.
of time in it once you've done the first one.
Yep. So that was the first big win for me of like generating consistent revenue as an entrepreneur. And the rest is history. My name, just people started referring people to me. I started building webinars. I did a couple where I was actually delivering for them. That's obviously not scalable, but that is how we launched the webinar agency back in early 2015.
That's so cool. I have a question for you now.
Of course.
How did you find... do you still deliver some of the webinars for your clients? Or you don't do that anymore?
Not at this point. So when we have recorded, like automated webinars or what I call mini webinars and recorded presentations, I do have somebody on my team who can do it. So he can record those presentations and produce them for them. But me personally, no, I haven't done it in probably 2 years.
Right, and the reason why I'm asking it is because part of the service that we offer when we do the seminar is doing a similar thing, but for seminar selling,
Mm-hmm.
which costs a lot of money, but I know I can get conversions.
Yep.
So when I always know my conversion. As long as I believe in the product, I believe in the service, I get the market. So that's why I was curious to see
So
what was
you
the
will do how
dynamic.
many? Yeah, how long are your seminars like that you do for your clients?
Evening. Yeah, it could be evening seminars, but sometimes it could be even a day seminar or a weekend seminar.
Okay,
Uh,
so it's just a single presentation. It's not like a
yeah,
3 day seminar.
no. It wouldn't be.
Okay.
Or if it's a 3 day seminar, I will be there for one day of the 3 days. But they need to pay me a lot up front,
Yeah.
plus revenue share,
Yep.
plus, for me to be there. But that's something is a model that I love in particular because there are some people that have they are cash rich and time poor, and they will say, I rather not. I know it would take me years to be at the level of mastery. Do it for me, but I like the fact that you scale it. So now you have someone in your team that can do those presentation as well for your clients because that's I think is one of the biggest problems in any things that involves presentation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not great at delivering presentation, you can have the best slide deck in the world, it ain't gonna convert.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
So I want now to move and transition into how do you see the webinar industry right now? We are mid 2018. What's working right now? What's not working? What's the status of the webinar industry right now?
Great question. So the way that I see it right now is, webinars have become more and more popular. I mean, just like everything, I don't want to say it's getting saturated because I believe that webinars, okay, the word webinar is just a digitized version of a sales presentation, right? And you do in-person sales seminars and sales presentations, and the main value that people get when they attend a sales presentation is what? It's the engagement and the interaction and the connection with somebody right there, right?
Yeah.
So whenever somebody says like, "Oh, webinars are dying," it's like, well, you have to define what you mean by a webinar. Like if you're talking about like an automated sales presentation where you're trying to automate it and scale it to the moon, I mean, and depending on what market you serve, like maybe it is because when internet marketers get their hands on something, they'll ruin it for everybody because they're just going to flood it and do the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
But an actual like sales presentation, a sales seminar will never go out of style because you have that human to human interaction and there's nothing like it. You can tailor your message to it. You can rebound, you can answer questions, and you can have that engagement live. And that's what makes a webinar so effective. Now, what I've seen lately is people following scripts and formulas, right, that they can buy for $7 on the internet, and that is getting
Making no names.
yeah, that is getting way
Yeah.
way overplayed because now everybody's using, like, they're taking all the creativity out of it. They're like, oh, well, I used these, specific closes that, I bought in this script and, it doesn't sound like me, but like, why am I not making conversions? Or I have the same introduction as this other webinar that I have modeled. And it's like, just like any sort of copy and sales presentation, like it all depends on your market. I'll give you an example. Just this past week, I've been working with Eric Sue, who runs Single Grain, and he's partnered with Neil Patel. And he's like, hey, man, I want you to help me with my webinar. I'm like, okay, cool. So he's got this, he's got an awesome product, dude is super smart, an excellent marketer. And, he was trying to sell a certain product to an audience. And, after the first webinar I saw it, it just like, I could see that he was kind of using some of the scripts that, he was trying to use some of the scripts that he'd seen on the internet. I'm like, listen, man, like we gotta figure out, number one, like really who is your audience? Because like he was definitely targeting a more affluent audience. I'm like, and if you're trying to use an internet marketer script who's trying to sell business opportunity to people who are much more responsive to hypey language, like your conversions are going to tank because people will see right through it.
Yep.
And so it's that balance. You have to understand, like, number one, as the presenter, what are you most comfortable with? Like, that is like golden rule number one. Because if you're following a script that you're not comfortable with, it will come through. And people will see that you are not comfortable and you're trying to sell them something. And that's not what you want to do. And number two, what is your market actually going to respond to, right? It's not like there's magic words that get people to, I mean, there are specific words that get people to take action, but like, don't copy somebody else's in another market. Don't copy their words that work for them and their closing techniques that work for them. Like, we have to figure out what actually works for your audience that maintains your brand, and that's the overarching goal.
What I'm hearing you saying is about leveraging of the uniqueness of the presenter and
Yes.
what the presenter, that person, will sound like in a normal interaction. How would you sell your course if you didn't have to use the script which is given from someone else, and then put your creativity in there? So then when someone actually sees your webinar, then stays there, because it's not the repetition and the same thing that I've listened to the day before from the other guy down the road. Which unfortunately, I can see the parallel with seminars and with webinars. I think every time we talk about sales presentation, this is a very relevant fact. When mentioning as well what's working right now, is that something that some things that used to work 2, 3, 4 years ago, and right now, if you do the same thing, it will be like, you might not get great results with this. Given that given the scenario that the presentation is right, you're engaging, you are unique. I'm more talking about strategic level.
Yeah. So the way that kind of what's been evolving over the past few years is, like, very, very clearly, automated webinars they're very difficult to get up and running. Like, even if you have the presentation that converts to a live audience, like, we have seen, like, getting that automated and building that automated funnel to work on autopilot, like, those are two completely separate skill sets, and like, it's very, very difficult to make that work. And I hope that everybody can turn their webinar and make it automated. And it's just what I have seen, with emails, email conversion, email open rates are dropping. Like, email's still super, super powerful. I'm just kind of like showing the trends of what's happened over the past 3 years. Email open rates are dropping, and people driving cold traffic to an automated webinar funnel, which, depending on the market, like, I do and I don't. Like, if it's a business opportunity, that can work. But if it's, it is so very market specific, like how you plug in where you plug in your webinar is a conversion mechanism. But like, that automated webinar funnel, which is what everybody wants, they want to make sales on autopilot. Like, it is becoming more and more difficult to make that work. And when you make it work, like, it's awesome. Like, ride that until the cows come home. Mike Dillard has a very, very solid auto webinar that has been consistently producing him $300,000 to $400,000 per month for the past 3 years, and it's just cold traffic, webinar registration, and it plays twice a day, and it sells a $1,500 product. Everybody looks at that, they're like, I want one of those. I'm like, number one, Mike Dillard is a freaking fantastic copywriter.
Is Mike Dillard?
Yeah,
Mike Dillard is Mike Dillard.
Yep. He's been around, so he's got brand equity that's built up, so people know his name and they automatically have a level of trust that's associated with him. But like, people will see those results, like, that's what I want. Joel or Simone, like, I want you to build one of those for me. And it's like, let's pump the brakes. Let's kind of like back up and let's see what's going on. But the automated webinar, very, very powerful. It takes a lot of effort to get that dialed in.
Do you still use automated webinar for your business?
So direct selling, no. That We will be implementing we're launching a new brand coming up called Experts Unleashed, which will be launching very, very shortly. And we are planning to use an automated direct selling webinar for that. When I go automated, I usually go automated webinars for phone consultations or automated mini webinars for phone consultations. And that's what I have leveraged over the past 3 years the most. When I do direct selling webinars, I'm usually on there live selling it. We can talk about this if you want. I'm not sure if it's relevant to your audience, but like your product, like what you're actually selling is quite possibly the most important element in determining if you use a webinar, a webinar as your sales mechanism or not. And that's one of the reasons why I haven't used an automated webinar to sell what I've got. But
that's a very good. You make a very good point because at the end of the day, you're always starting from the end in mind.
Yep.
The end is we want to sell this product, and this is the audience that will buy it. So which one is the best way to get in touch with the audience so they can buy the product at its price point?
Yep.
And that is Sales 101, which unfortunately a lot of people forget because they get bogged down into the tactics of, oh my God, I need to make sales on autopilot. Otherwise, otherwise I'm not successful in this industry unless I make this thing happening.
Yep.
Talking about your live webinar. So you're doing a live webinar right now. You mentioned that the product is important and it's crucial to decide if you're doing a live webinar, automated webinar or no webinar at all. But if you had to choose between webinar to consultation and webinar to direct sale, which one do you think is the most powerful?
Okay, so with your target audience, I will say webinar to consultation, and here's why. When I'm launching any new offer, product, like when I'm launching a brand new offer, I want to get people on the phone as quickly as possible, right? And I use a webinar to pre-sell them. Like I want to educate them on the opportunity and pre-sell them, so I'm only talking with qualified people, right? When you do a direct selling webinar, you are, and assuming you don't have a crazy indoctrination funnel where you can use a direct selling webinar to sell like a $10,000 product because they do need more time to make that decision. Yeah. Versus if you
put your credit card in. Jeez.
Right. So, like typically speaking, with 99.999% of the funnels that I see out there, direct selling webinar, you're going to be limited to $1,500 to $2,000 price point. Very, very max, right? With the majority of the webinars that I see out there. With a consultation, I can sell them anything that I want, and I can sell it at almost any price point that I want. Perfect example, we have a client who we launched, so this is last week, we launched a mini webinar funnel, and we were generating him qualified appointments for $19 a piece. He spent a total of $120. He generated 6 appointments and applications, so for $20 a piece.
That's so good.
And people are naturally going to say, oh, were they qualified, and did they actually show up? Yes, he talked to all of them. 3 of them have follow-up sales conversations. He just closed one of them yesterday for $8,000 down and a total sale of $70,000. And he has 2 more follow-ups.
Sweet. That's a good ROI. That's a bloody good ROI. Jeez.
And he would not have been able to do anything close to that if you were trying to sell directly on the phone. Or directly on the webinar. This was all phone consultation. So my highest leverage point is getting those phone leads first, right? Getting to $50K a month. That's kind of like my golden number when I'm testing new offers. I want to get to $50K a month before I then start to reinvest into my time. Like, how can I get more time back? Because that's going to take, I'm hitting phone, like I'm having phone consultations, I'm gathering market research, and I'm making offers and sales, right?
Yeah.
If I can't get to $50,000 a month, then I know something is off with my offer, and that allows me to pivot. Getting on the phone allows me to pivot and understand that. Until I get to $50,000, in sales, once I hit that, then I'll invest into automation or hiring a phone sales team to take me off the phone or some sort of other type of direct selling webinar. But that's kind of the mentality that I go through.
That's brilliant. And when at the moment, when people book the consultation, do you do the consultations, or do you have a sales team doing the consultations? What's the model that you're currently using?
So to start, I'm always the one who does it because I want to get the data. I want to talk to them,
Yeah,
and I know that I will always have. Actually, I'm actually a terrible phone salesperson, but when you're the expert and you're selling it, you will
it's
naturally have
different.
a higher
Yeah,
you'll have a higher closing rate because if you're the one especially fulfilling on it, like they're going to want to talk to you anyway, right? But to answer your question, when I'm first starting out, I will do the phone sales and I will talk to the people because I want to know what do they want, what are their objections, what do they need, and where are they stuck. So all of those things that I will be able to get data from, and then I can make them the appropriate offer. And I always have multiple offers in my back pocket when I get on the phone. So I start out on the phone, and then once we get something that I know is converting, we've got the right message, we've got the right audience, and we're getting them consistently on the phone, then I hire a phone sales team,
I see.
have them start taking the calls, and then we do other types of methods of scale to close more deals. And then if we really want to, we'll build an automated or a live direct selling webinar that we might do once a week. Test that because that has to go through its own iteration because now you're talking to a different segment of your market. Have to make sure that you get those specific pain
Yeah.
points. We'll be much further along in the process because we've already done phase 1 with the phone, and then that's phase 2 is live direct selling, like a weekly webinar. Phase 3 is automating and scaling, automating the webinar, building that automated funnel, and going from there.
No, it's so refreshing because there are a lot of people that they already have a nice business here that might be listening, and they think they need to invest this crazy or months to create this automated webinar or this very complex webinar funnel, while you can just have something much simpler
Yeah.
where you jump on a phone call with them after the webinar. And that's all you
Mm-hmm.
got to do. So become the
Yep.
webinar and a booking page. I'm assuming directly linked to your calendar, so
Mm-hmm.
people can book their time in while they're on the webinar.
Yep.
And do you give any type of scarcity? Like you can book the call only while you're on the webinar, or they can book the call even after the webinar. What do you find works the best in that
Um,
way?
it all comes down to brand. So whatever you're most comfortable with, then you have to kind of work backwards and figure out what type of
Yeah.
scarcity and urgency that you want to use. For my client that we worked with last week, we made it. The scarcity was that he was looking to partner with 2 clients, and that was a legit scarcity. We didn't put scarcity on the number of calls that he was going to take. He just made a very clear offer saying, listen, I'm looking to work with 2 clients this week, right? So here's what we want to do. Like, here's my offer. Here's what I want to do for you. I'm looking to work with 2 clients this week. If you're interested, let's fill out the application and then we'll book a time to talk, right? And so the scarcity was really, I'm working with 2 clients. I've opened up my calendar this week to take calls and find the right fit. And that worked very, very well. When I was running, so my automated webinar is currently not running right now because we're booked on leads and we're solid. So when I was running my automated webinar, it was basically like, hey, listen, we have spots open for my coaching program right now. I don't know how long it's going to be open. And it was all very, very legit because we did end up closing it down when we filled up. So it's like, listen, if you're watching this webinar right now, that means that we do have spots still open. So I encourage you to take action now. But honestly, the biggest urgency, one of the best ways of providing legit urgency is just saying like, is letting them know that like we want to help you as soon as humanly possible. Like the longer that you wait, the longer it's going to delay yourself
Yeah.
from getting
Yeah.
results, right? And that's usually good enough just to get them on the phone. Like you don't have to do any sort of
Sure.
crazy, sales tactics to be like, oh, I just need to get them on the phone, right? Because the more you push them onto the phone, the higher the likelihood of them not showing is actually going to happen. But
Because people are obsessed with scarcity and they put like an insane level of scarcity where sometimes it feels like you know what, I don't need this, I actually enjoyed what you said and I would jump on a call with you anyway, because you tapped into the right thing that I needed to hear for me to make the decision. So whether there are 5 places or 100 places, I would have booked the call anyway.
mm-hmm.
Before we go on the lifting the veil part, I have one more question, which is when you are when you're doing the webinar to phone call, do you
Mhm.
mention the price of the offer, or is that a bit of mystery and intrigue? They say this is the result that you're going to get by working together. Jump on the call, and we'll let you know more details.
Great question. So the way that I approach that, when somebody asks me, "Oh, do I reveal the price or do I withhold it so I can talk to them and really build the value?" Whenever I hear that question, like people are really asking, like, number one, they want to make sure that they're only talking to the most qualified people, right?
Exactly.
So if you don't reveal the price, your chances of getting people who can't afford your program go up because you're not adding that level of filtering. However, with all sales, like there's an opportunity, like you still want to have the opportunity to conquer their objections and build the value, which is the whole purpose of the sales call. Because on the sales call or on the assessment call, their consultation call, whatever you want to call it, your job is to kind of extract their pain, figure out how much their pain is really worth, and then talking about what your value is. When you're not saying it in these direct terms, but then showing what your real value is so they can see for themselves, like, yes, it's really worth it. Because if you just came out and said, yeah, hey, Simone, I'm totally interested in your program, or, and you just come out and be like, yeah, it's 10 grand. Like in their mind, they're not sold. And maybe they're sold on it, but like a lot of people still need to be sold on the value before
Depends
they buy.
how much a relationship they have with you, how warm or hot they are, for how long they've been following you. There are a bunch of stuff that matter.
So inside of earlier in our conversation, I don't know actually if I mentioned this, but I told you I have multiple offers. Like I usually have multiple offers in my back pocket, right? So the way that I've been able to kind of conquer this, like revealing the price without like cannibalizing my opportunity, because if you tell people that like, yeah, it's a $10,000 price on the webinar, and you want to hop on the phone and just make sure that they're a good fit, your applications are gonna drop dramatically. You will get super qualified people, and you should be able to close almost all of them that get on the phone.
They are already in. Like literally, is give me the credit card details. That becomes the close at that point.
Yep. So here is where I kind of marry the two. So I will tell them that like, hey, listen, right? Obviously, I've got an offer on the call, and I make it very transparent. Like we're going to figure out if this is a good fit, and if it is, then I'll invite you into the program. There are a couple of options that we have, right? So, people are probably wondering about the price. Here's what I'll do. Like, depending on the level of service you get from me will depend on the program and the investment that is required for you. What that means is like my fees or my programs range from, let's say, $2,000 to $25,000, right? So I give that range so they know like, okay, cool, this isn't a $50 program, right?
Yeah.
So I give the low range, and then I give my absolute highest range, knowing that the vast majority are probably going to be somewhere in the middle. But now they're price anchored. They're like, okay, cool. Simone has a $50,000 program, and he also has a $2,000 program, right? So when I talk to him or his team, they'll figure out what the best option is. So if you come in, you're like, yeah, you know what? The best option for you is my $6,000 level, right? They know that there's a 25K. There's a lot of juxtaposition that happens there. I
love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, I can see
I
that working very well. You give them the range, so then they understand what is the minimum investment, but also they also see the value of the maximum investment, and that will attract to some certain level of people that will say, well, tell me about the 25 grand first.
Yep.
I can see that working. Fabulous.
It works very, very well.
Yep.
Because when you get on the phone, and you're like, oh, well, I really wanted your done for you service. I'm like, all right, awesome. Like, that's my $25,000 to $50,000 offer. And yeah, it's done for you. And it comes with all these guarantees or blah, 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 blah.
Oh, but I cannot afford it right now. Great.
Perfect.
No problem.
Right? That equally is valuable. Meaning like,
absolutely.
It's like I gave you all of my scripts and my templates and my frameworks, right? And I even give you some coaching. So like, if you can't afford it, like that's totally fine. Like that's why we put this other option for you.
So then you get to the point where then you can upgrade and you can afford the other done for you. You can have more time back.
Yep. 100%.
Bingo! Love it. Absolutely love it. I think that you have solved the big question that a lot of people using application
Hmm.
kind of selling style application to calls
Hmm.
they have. Now I'm aware of the time, so I want to move into the lifting the veil session, and then we're going to wrap up. Now,
Yep.
what is something that you use in your business, in your life, that makes a difference for you personally, and that everyone else needs to know? Lift the veil.
So one of the books that I recently just finished is a monstrosity of a book. It's called Principles by Ray Dalio. So I got it right here if anyone's watching the video on this. This has been, so as we go through, I'm a direct response marketer at heart. So I look at like everything's very measurable and I'm looking for immediate responses, right? But as we evolve and I start working with bigger businesses, I start learning more of the importance with branding and kind of like developing that fine line between direct response and brand awareness marketing, because they are two very different ends of the spectrum, right? So I'm trying to figure out how to meet in the middle. When I read Principles by Ray Dalio, it was like the ultimate guiding light. Like branding is all about like you have these rules, these principles that you kind of follow, and like that determines everything that you do. But everything, all those decisions that you make are being led by these set of rules, right? And so as I read Principles by Ray Dalio, like he talks about building very large companies and getting everyone on the same team. It reminds me of like this journey that I'm on right now, where like, okay, I have bigger and bigger clients who want to leverage webinars, but they're they're not sold on like going full blown direct response,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And so now like I need to marry and develop a little bit more brand, awareness marketing and try and meet them in the middle. I mean, I'm working on like two clients specifically who were like, they can't go all the way direct response. They would rather spend much more money and give a ton of free content and free value and just hope that they sell people down the road. And I'm like, oh my God, that is so against what I stand for. But, I'm trying to meet them in the middle. But anyway,
Yeah.
to come back to my secret weapon, Principles has allowed me to kind of understand that a little bit more and figure out how to apply. It's not a marketing book, but it allows you to understand the high level concepts of leading your life by principles, leading your business by principles, because those ultimately make all of your decisions for you. So that's a great one.
Oh, you know what? I've heard so many times talk about this book. I'm gonna buy it. You convince me.
Yep.
Because it just came popping up and popping up and popping up, and you know what? I say, okay, I got enough messages. I'm gonna get the book. So thank you very much. We're going to put the book as well in the show notes, so you can click and get Principles by Ray Dalio, which is the awesome resource that Joel just shared. Now, Joel, it's been a brilliant interview. Everyone who uses webinar or is thinking about using webinars, I'm sure they will find it very useful. And
Hmm.
what if they want to know about how they can work with you or get into your world? What's the next
Yeah.
step?
Yeah, the best way is to head over to so I have something called the Webinar Vault, which is basically like my brain completely dissected. Every month I'm looking at like 10 to 15 webinars and I'm studying them, I'm critiquing them. And so what I've done is inside of the Webinar Vault, I upload the best of the best webinars that I've been researching. I critique them. I show what the psychology is. I explain the psychology, and like I am all about framework, not about scripts. And so I dissect it so it's in frameworks that are applied that can be applicable for anyone in their business. So I have like 8 or 9 that are uploaded in the vault as of recording this. And I also have software that people can use to build their own sales presentations, their own sales webinars in under 30 minutes. It is not a scripting tool. It is a framework tool, but is very, very powerful. So you can check that out with a 7-day free trial. Sorry, my son just hopped in here.
Say
There's a
hi.
7-day free trial. Yeah, there's a 7-day free trial at soldwithwebinars.com. You can check it out there. Or connect with me at thewebinaragency.com. And you can also listen to my podcast at Sold with Webinars, and I have a second podcast for experts called Experts Unleashed. So lots of ways that you can connect with me and follow my stuff.
Brilliant. You will find all the links in the show notes, and make sure that you check as well Sold with Webinars, so that you can listen to the interview that we did. We talked about how to using webinars and seminars combined. I'm sure you will find it very interesting if you haven't already listened to it from the emails and social media posts that I've already put out about the episode. Joel, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thanks a lot.
Simone, thank you so much, man. I had a blast. It was an excellent conversation.
It was indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. Make sure you subscribe right now. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? And also leave us a review. 5-star, of course, letting us know what did you enjoy the most about this episode with Joel. I'll see you next time, and always remember that together we grow exponentially. Ciao.